Hello, good evening, and welcome to Soul School Sojourn. Jeff, my co-host, Jeff Turner, is just I just love you so much, and it's so great to see you. I swear to God, well, classes in session, yada yada. Okay, so all right, so the thing I just want to take a couple of moments because every now and then, Jeff, I'll get a flash of the it was like afternoon, dusky. It was very foggy outside. It was a beautiful day, and we were sitting together at a table near a window in the restaurant of the Lakeside Resort.
Yep.
And I said something to the effect of, "Do you want to do a show together?" I had really just begun. I was only a few months in, I believe, with KGRA, which has been a godsend to me and a wonderful, wonderful, safe, cushy, comfortable place to drop in cyberspace.
Yes.
And of course, I'm madly in love with Bill, our producer, who lives in upstate New York. So good for him, because otherwise I'd be coming over every morning for coffee. And you said yes immediately. I mean, you didn't even stop and think about it or think, maybe I should discuss this with my wife, my family,
I knew they'd be on board. Yeah.
Yeah. That's our guy right there.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, it was instant. And I called Bill and it was instant. I mean, it took us like a couple of weeks to get the logistics together and write the intro and the description for the show and then do the opening and the closing and all of that. And then voila, poof, here we are. Almost every Friday night we get to be together.
Yeah.
If I'm not traveling or you're not traveling, we rarely run a rerun, a rebroadcast of the show, even though I'm very proud of so many of the shows that we've done. I think have really touched people's hearts and opened them up in unusual ways, and they think differently about things. And all I care about is that we're all thinking. That's what I care about, is that we're all engaged, as it were, in this thing called life, and paying attention and being rooted in reality, which is, funny coming from somebody who talks to extraterrestrials. There's an awful lot of people on this planet that wouldn't consider that I was rooted in reality. And
I talked to a virgin-born carpenter who was sucked up into heaven at the age of 33 after having been crucified. So I guess, whatever. Rationality goes out the window. Yeah. You know what's so interesting too, Andrea, is, I thoroughly, well, for one, when you offered that invitation, as we were sitting there looking out at the water and, I think drinking coffee, I just had a yes in my spirit about it. One of those things that, I can sometimes be a little hesitant just because, I've entered into agreements and projects in the past with people that didn't quite pan out. But there was a yes in my spirit the moment you said it. And I just knew it was a divine thing. It was something that was meant to be. And, I always believe that the universe or God or whatever word you want to use will always give you, maybe not always, but there often are, when you've entered into when you're in a kairos moment, which means just a moment that's divinely set, when you're in a moment like that, there are usually those little winks and nods that come to you from the cosmos. And what was interesting is right as you were pitching the idea to me, because I work a day job, I work a day job to keep the lights on and the lunches packed and a roof over our heads. And, my wife does as well. And by the way, that the Houghton Lake, the UFO contact, that conference, it's held about 3.5 hours from where I live. Right. So that's a decent distance. Right. So the odds of just running into someone who I interact with on a daily basis at that hotel that particular weekend. It's just odd, right? But
Yeah.
right as you're pitching that idea to me, my boss actually walks across the restaurant as you're pitching the idea, and I'm just like, what? And so, like, after we had got done talking, I was like, excuse me, and I went out and said, hey, and he was like, Jeff, what are you doing here? Him and his wife were both out there. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm just here speaking at a UFO convention. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I live a different life on the weekends. And but so that was just a weird, kind of just a weird confluence of events. And on the day that our show began, my boss, he had tendered his resignation several weeks prior to that. And on the day that our show began, I took over his desk and took over his position on the day that our show began. So how that all ties in, don't necessarily know, but it's just one of those very interesting synchronicities and winks and nods from the universe that just sort of lets you know you're kind of on the right path, and it's just one of those things. Like we were even talking this week just about seeing numbers in certain sequences. And I think sometimes there's a very specific message attached to the numbers and to what it means and the values and what have you. And then sometimes it's maybe just the universe's way of saying you're in sync, and events like that do the same thing. Your internal, how you're synced up inside manifests on the outside. And that was one of those events. Pardon me, I have to sneeze.
That's okay. Well, you almost got a text message at 4:44 a.m. And then I thought, if he leaves his phone on next to the bed, I'll wake him up, and I don't want to do that. So, but I sent you a telepathic message because at 4:44, as I was sitting with Peanut over on the sofa, right over here, there, wondering if I will ever sleep again. I glanced down at my phone and it was 4:44 and I laughed out loud. It's just, it's constant. It started maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I had just this morning, the clock in my car, I took a picture of it and I was going to send it to you and I didn't, but the clock in my car got all messed up. And so I'm driving my son to school at 7. Well, he's supposed to be there at 7:30. He rolled out of bed at probably 7:35. So we're probably leaving the house at 7:35. But my clock in my car got all messed up at 7:35 a.m. and it read 4:44 at 7:35 a.m. It's like, of all the random numbers it could be messed up to project right as I turn the car on, anyways.
Yeah, something's going on. And it feels oddly angelic to me. Just so much goodness, so much light, trying to infiltrate, trying to get our attention, trying to remind us to be hopeful. I don't remember if I talked with you about this, and I know we have something very specific that we want to hop into that I have all written down in my text messages between us. So I'll let you run with that in a minute, but
we have plenty of time tonight, though. So.
We do. We have 2 whole hours because we're going to hop, skip, and jump over into a world awakening. We might even save some of what we were going to start with to finish, over there. Well, we never do finish, though, do we, Jeff? I mean, it's kind of a good thing that you do have a real job, that you go to every single day, because my schedule's my own, and I could, if I knew you were home, I would just pick up the phone every time I have an interesting thought, and we'd end up talking for 3 hours a day.
Yeah, I would prefer that. But
yeah, it would be better than work. Yeah, but no, this is so great for me. It's something that I look forward to. If I'm having a hard time, I'm having a difficult week, I'm having, a lot of stuff coming down on my head recently. Oh, I don't know, lost my house in Florida to a flood, and that's just part of it, I mean, in terms of what has impacted me personally, at the very, very top of the list is my mom. And this one right here, That one right there. There. She keeps me sane. She
Mm.
keeps me silly. She keeps my heart jumping. Um, every time I see her do something phenomenal, like there should be Olympics for dogs, phenomenal.
Mm.
She's an amazing creature.
Mm.
And she keeps me balanced and grounded and happy. But a lot of us are going through a lot of really hard stuff right now. It's not just me. It's not just you. I don't know anybody, not anybody. I can't think of a single person I know that isn't facing some kind of significant challenge right now.
Mm.
And I have to think that this is part of what's happening with us. And I've had a lot of people, even people that I know well enough that they have my phone number and text me saying, "Oh, I saw 333, or I'll get, here's another 1111 for you, lady." I
Yeah.
mean, it's all day during the day, people are acknowledging that they're seeing it too, when it was, maybe an occasional thing before, and now it's very persistent. And so, we don't know what it is that's causing it. We don't know what's involved or how there is correlation or integration, if that exists. But I can't help but believe. I remember the look on your face when you looked up and saw your boss walking through the restaurant a few
Hmm.
feet away from you,
Yeah.
not knowing that you were there. That's more than a coincidence, which I don't really believe in anyway. It's
Hmm.
more than a synchronicity. It's almost like a deliberate placement. Like we're living into our destiny, and this is kind of all set in place, and that was supposed to happen, and he was supposed to see you in that environment, and
Hmm.
something shifted in him, and within a very short amount of time he turned in his resignation and he left,
Hmm.
and you took his spot, and that
Hmm.
all happened within a few short weeks.
Yeah. It was bizarre. Like, it was truly bizarre. Like, truly, truly bizarre. And
Yeah.
even when he tendered his resignation, it was like, hey, knock on the office door. Hey, come into the sales office or whatever real quick. I'm like, all right, and because I got my little area. And so I went in there, and he just, nobody knew. And it was just like sudden, out of nowhere. And then it all just coincided like that. It's like, look, man, you hate to be the kind of person. I don't hate to be that kind of person. Actually, I quite enjoy it. But having gone through, but having gone through a stint as an atheist, my brain was kind of trained. Okay, don't read intention into everything. You're kind of,
Uh-huh. I
you're
know. I
seeing,
know. I try to avoid it myself. I
yeah,
do,
you're
but
seeing patterns
it
where there are
slaps you
none.
in the face sometimes.
Right. But you know what? I am at this point, I think I'm kind of over that. And materialism has really kind of lost its luster for me. And I'm really sort of realizing that no, we really are embedded in some sort of epic narrative. And there is some grand author who's written a grand tale, and we are privileged to be a part of it. And that grand author, even if it's us in some other realm, lets us know that we're on the path that we're supposed to be on. And it can come to us in the form of repeating numbers. It can come to us by your boss walking past right when you're speaking about an opportunity that you really feel is going to end up opening doors and whatever. And it could come in a lot of different ways. I was pumping gas the other day, and the gas pump stopped right at 11:11. Right, I had it locked, and it stopped at 11:11, and I just felt, just leave it there, you know and that probably put like what, half a gallon of gas in my tank. But anyways, no, I felt to leave it there because the next person who came along, that was going to be something for them. And the universe, God, whatever, is constantly conspiring to deliver messages to us like that. And yeah, I believe that. And like I said, there was a time in my life where I very much believed that way. And then I went through a season where I sort of lost all of that, and I lost that initial wonder.
Mhm.
And sense of awe and enchantment about the world, and began to see everything as just happenstance, coincidental, material. And I stopped seeing the beauty in things like that, and was like, oh yeah, well, you saw a repeating sequence of numbers. It's just as unlikely that you would see any sequence of numbers, and like when they say, if you pick a certain card out, well, if you pick a certain sequence of cards out, if you get all the aces, well, you're just as likely to get any other run of 4 cards, whatever. And it's like, well, that might be the case, but patterns mean something, right? Yeah. Randomness might not communicate a message, but a pattern communicates a message. And we live in a world that is laden with symbols. Mm-hmm. We live in a universe that whatever one thinks is out there, we know consciousness exists in the universe because we are conscious, right. And even if it's just us, the individual person doing the speaking, who is the one consciousness, and everything else is just an extension of that one. We at least know consciousness exists, right? Mm. And so we also know then there are levels of consciousness, right? There are different levels of consciousness, and we just happen to fancy ourselves as being the holder of the highest form of consciousness. But what an absurd thought that is, right? And so absurd. It is. There are intelligences and consciousnesses out there greater than ours, or that ours is being beamed into this whatever body we inhabit through. And life is just life is a setup. Every step of the way, we're being set up for something, and we walk into these divine appointments, these coincidences, these synchronicities, and we come up with all of these names to try to explain what this is. But I'm just convinced that Plato said that time is the moving image of eternity. And so eternity is everything, everywhere, all at once, everything that was, is, and will be, just simply all existing in one pulsating sacred now. And time is the means by which you and I experience that which simply is in the realm of eternity. And the way that that is streamed to us is kind of in the form of a story and like a narrative. And it just seems to be that way. And so characters appear at different times in our lives. Teachers appear at different times in our lives. And that's why the great myths and all of these stories, our lives map so perfectly over top of them, because that is what life is. We are in that, and, like I said, I still have my materialist proclivities and biases, but more and more, I'm just returning to a state of childlike wonder and awe at whatever the hell it is that the universe is doing. Because at every turn, it's surprising me and leaving me gobsmacked and in awe, picking my jaw up off the floor, Andrea. I mean,
seriously. I know. I just turned 65 years old last month, and 2 months ago now. And oh my God, I'm already 2 years into 65. Holy shit. But everybody's like, oh, you're not getting older. You just, you're wise. I've had a lot of people lately use that word in conjunction with me. Mm-hmm. And, I look at them and I'm like, you know what? The longer I live, the more I realize how little we know. Hmm. And if that's wisdom, then I am wise beyond measure. Mm-hmm. But I feel like we are just crawling up to the touchstone, that we are almost there, and that maybe in my lifetime I'll see it and we'll make it. But that awareness that comes with the realization of oneness, what you were just talking, everything being one thing, everything being the whole, there are different consciousnesses. Maybe it's all one that has multiple levels of, we could all be human beings that just walk around bumping into each other, like a pinball machine all day long with vacant stares in our eyes. Right. That we could be like cows in a pasture. I'm not, nothing against cows. Please don't get me wrong. I never cast aspersions against cows.
No way.
Some of my very favorite friends. And they don't tend to gossip.
This is true.
But that's how we could be. That could be the expression of human consciousness, living instinctively, reproducing instinctively, back in, even the cavemen were very intellectually sophisticated.
Yeah.
There's just too much science about that goes back multiple thousands of years, where humanity was creative and humanity was inventive and humanity was burgeoning and growing, and the dark ages weren't so dark. There was a great renaissance of art and literature and music, and the world changed in extraordinary ways during what we now disparagingly refer to as the dark ages. But here's the thing. I think, I don't know, but I think it's plausible that we have some element of determinism or destiny, is another word for that, a simile.
Yeah.
But we also have free will. Here, I'll give you an example. You didn't have to identify yourself to your boss as being there. Your boss didn't have to call you into the office and basically hand over the keys to the car to you. Or you could have said, no, thank you. I have enough responsibility. And I'll just keep the job I have. I appreciate it, but say no.
Yeah.
And I always say yes to the universe if I can possibly do so. I say yes to the universe.
Yes.
But I think that we have the option not to float in those moments that present themselves to us. And we have to just draw back a little bit and take a look at it, as objectively as possible when we're in a subjective situation, and say, what does this mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It might not mean anything, but it might mean everything. But if you don't stop, take a moment to pause and reflect on what is happening right now. Oh, there goes my boss. I'm going to get up and go say hello to him. You made a conscious decision to identify yourself and tell him why you were there. 3 weeks later, you had his job and he was gone. I don't know what that means, but I think it means something.
Yeah. No, I do. Yeah.
Never know. You may never know what shifted.
Yeah. No, and the butterfly effect is a very real thing. That one little action of yours can create a whole nother universe, really. There's a great documentary on the BBC I watched a few months back on chaos theory.
I love
and I cannot remember the host's name, but if you just look up BBC documentary chaos theory, and they do a great example of the butterfly effect, where they just loop, like do a feedback loop of like a candle, I believe, and just projecting back and forth onto a screen. And at first it's just the flickering flame of a candle, and by the time all of this feedback occurs, it's a pattern that looks like some surrealist painter painted this. Like, you're like, there's no way that's just the chaos of this candle flickering and feeding back, over and over and over again. You would have had, it was absolutely mind-blowing, the pattern that was created by quote unquote chaos and randomness. And, but the candle flickers a little bit this way, a whole new image is created. It flickers a little that way, a whole different image is created. It could even be a whole different color, because it might feed back on a different part of the flame or whatever, and so little actions like that literally create, I believe, entirely different alternate universes almost. And even if that's just, because I go back and forth with myself, just because my mind tends to be going constantly, is this just a story you tell yourself to help you make sense of reality? And I've come to the conclusion that I really don't care. One way or the other, it works. And I do, as a kid, I used to love the choose your own adventure books, where you come to the end of this, you come up to this climactic moment and you can choose, do I go into the dark woods or do I go back home or whatever? And, it's usually you end up going back home and choosing the safe route that you end up getting killed Whereas if you go into the woods, a whole adventure opens up before you. But it's like every day, every moment, we're at multiple forks in the road, and literal entire new worlds and universes at every decision like that. It forks off in all of these different directions. And you might think it's an insignificant thing, but it's not. And like you said, who knows what would have happened if I hadn't gotten up from the table and talked to my boss? I don't know. Maybe it would have happened exactly as it happened, but maybe not. I don't know. But I don't know. We are creators, and we oftentimes we're just kind of bumbling about sometimes, not realizing we're creating entire universes through actions and inactions and acts of commission and omission. But we are, and the more mindful we can be about the fact that we are creators, the more deliberately we can create the sort of reality we want to inhabit.
Right. Precisely.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. We are the deciders.
Mm-hmm.
We are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yes.
We are the light.
Yes.
We are the light.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that every time I turn around and I see 444 someplace that it doesn't belong or never was before, or, I saw it I went up to get the mail the other day. I went up to get the mail and a car drove by, and I never would do this. I would just open the mailbox, get the mail, and walk back down. And I turned and I looked at the license plate on the car, and it said angel or angelic. It said angelic on the license, ANJELIC. Yeah, 7. You can only have 7 in. That's what it was. And I was so taken back by that.
Yeah.
And then I looked down, I had my phone in my pocket, and something said, go ahead, look at your phone. And it was 444, and I had just gone to get the mail.
Yeah.
And that was not planned. I can hear the universe laughing when stuff like that happens, just laughing. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing.
It is. And I was doing something with some accounts the other day, and I was given an account number on a document, and I was entering it into a system, and I could not get this, would not process whatever it was that I was trying to process would not process. And I was like, there's something wrong with this account number. So I went to the individual who handles this, and I was like, I think I have the wrong account number for this particular thing I was doing. And they were like, oh, let me look into it. And it just so happened the first 3 numbers of the account number that I was trying to enter were missing. And those first 3 numbers were 444. And I entered that in. Voila, it works. And I'm like, okay, this is getting absurd at this point. You know what I mean? With with the frequency with which it was happening. And here's something to throw out there. The first time we saw that, could have just ignored it, right? Could have just been, oh, it's a coincidence. Whatever. And you know what? Maybe would have never seen it again. Maybe the series of events, the bridge of incidents, as Neville Goddard called it, would not have played out, would not have been built in front of us, wherever this thing ends up leading. But because you acknowledge it, it's like someone from across the room says your name. If you ignore that person, they might be like, oh, they're busy, and leave. But if you turn, a whole conversation could ensue, and God only knows where it could go. And it's like when you see one of those things like that, whatever it is, if it's 444, if it's 1111, if it's 911, if it's 777, if it's 321, if it's 71420, I don't care, whatever, something like that, or something totally different, a word, whatever. If you acknowledge it, if you acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, something is communicating with me here, if you acknowledge it, well, there's a good chance that it might continue attempting to communicate with you, but if you ignore it, maybe it'll shut up and move on to someone else who will listen, if things work that way. But the point is, but you never know where it's going to go if you follow it. you never know where the yellow brick road is going to lead you if you don't get on it, right? And so we were talking the other day because we were talking about 11/11 even, because I had that pop up. And I was telling you about how, several years ago, 11/11, that sequence of numbers literally changed my life. And I was in my maybe mid-20s, and I had been seeing this number everywhere I went. Everywhere I went, I was seeing it was 11/11. I was seeing it on license plates. I was just everywhere. And I didn't know that this was the thing that a lot of people were experiencing. Like, I'd never heard of that before. That was the first time I'd ever experienced like numbers and sequence like that I took note of, right? And that I thought maybe there's something spiritual to this. That was the first time that had ever happened to me. And so then one day I'm in my bedroom, I'm folding some clothes, and we had a big walk-in closet, and I'm listening to like a teaching, like a lecture, and the guy reads from the Gospel of John chapter 11, verse 11, and it's the story of Lazarus who's dead, right? And Jesus hears that his friend Lazarus is dead, and he says, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to him that I might wake him up." And when I heard those words, it was like a bolt of lightning went through my body, and I literally fell down in my closet. Like, it was like I got electrocuted, and I was like, oh my God. And when he said it, I didn't even know that he was reading John 11:11. He didn't say that was what he was reading, or at least I didn't register it consciously. It was only when I went back and read it that I was like, oh, that's the connection there. And then, so the whole thing came to me about, oh, this is about awakening somehow in some way. And then I was at a conference. I was on some kind of board for like a pastoral thing back in the day. And, we were staying in another city doing some meetings and whatnot. And I was driving home after this event, after this there was a series of meetings. And, I had the 11/11 thing happen to me again at the clock. And I had this weird sense. It was like a 2.5, 3 hour drive home. I had this weird sense to go about 65 miles an hour. And I wanted to get home. I had to speak that night. I had a service that night. I wanted to like speed all the way home at like 85, not that I would do such a thing, but that's how I wanted to do.
Right.
And so, but I ended up going, and it was weird because I just kept getting this impression of like, okay, slow down, get behind this car, just stay at this certain pace. And so I did it. I was like, I don't know what this is all about, but I had the sense right as 11:11 came up on my clock, and I followed it. Well, I was about 20 minutes from my house, and I felt to get off at this exit. So I get off at this exit, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing? And I felt go down this road. So I go down this road. I mean, dirt road, middle of nowhere. I can hear the Deliverance banjo playing. I'm like, oh shoot, what am I doing?
Row faster. Yep.
Yeah. And I see this woman crossing the street after getting her mail. And so I stop, and I hear inside of me, stop and ask this woman if the name Edwards means anything to her. So I stopped and I was like, does the name Edwards mean anything to you? And her face, she was like, why? And I'm like, this is just going to sound really weird, but I felt to turn down this road, and I just felt to ask you that. And she was like, we're the Edwards family. And I was like, okay. And then the name Jonathan came to me. And Jonathan Edwards is a famous revivalist preacher, Calvinist preacher from the First Great Awakening in New England. And I was like, okay, does the name Jonathan Edwards mean anything? Do you know? It's a kind of pretty common name still. But she was like, that's my son. And I was literally just praying for him because he's in Iraq or Afghanistan right now. And I was like, oh. And then I just was able to like give her this message and, tell her, I pray with her and assured her that I felt like he was okay. And she was just like in tears and just like, I can't believe this. How did you? And I was like, I don't know. But I was like, but I felt that whole time to go this certain speed so that I could have this interaction with this woman, which I would not have had otherwise because it was the right place at the right time. It came when I saw 11:11, which to me then meant awakening. And I happened to meet a woman who was praying for her son, whose name was Jonathan Edwards, who was the leader of the First Great Awakening in New England in American history. And then on my way home, I see a Carrie Edwards bumper sticker because that's how long ago this was. And I'm like, oh, there's another John Edwards. And then I'm reminded of the individual who at the time was a very famous medium and psychic, whose name was also John Edwards. And I had this whole download come to me about, that there was going to be an awakening in these three realms, in the religious realm, in the alternative spiritual community and in the political realm. And Jonathan Edwards is the there's like a calling of this, and there's like this figure of this mother who's praying, this former generation who's calling forth this new generation who's going to be a part of this. Anyways, this whole thing came to me. It changed my life. It changed the trajectory of everything that I was doing, and has led me to the place where I'm at today, ultimately, because I ended up taking some of the steps I took, because that's where this call came to me, where I felt like I was meant to be an awakener of some kind. What that meant, I didn't really know at the time, but that's where it happened. But it happened as a result, and I know that was a long story, but it happened as a result of following the breadcrumbs of a number on a digital clock, and just being like, okay, maybe this means something. And I followed it, and it ended up meaning something. And it's like, was I creating that path as I walked on it? Was the path already there and it was simply being illumined to me as I chose to walk on it? I can't tell you that, but all I know is that it did, in fact, lead somewhere, and it changed my life. But I could have very easily that first time just been like, oh, it's 11:11, big whoop, But instead, something in me stopped and was like, pay attention. There might be something there. There have been other times where maybe it hasn't really turned into something, but I would err on the side of believing that the universe, my place in it, your place in it, our place in it, is more significant than we often day to day are led to believe it is. I would rather err on the side of that than the side of thinking that I'm less significant than perhaps I am. Because if I believe the latter, well, then I'll just languish in whatever day-to-day life and be bored and whatever and just be an American. But if I follow the breadcrumbs that present themselves to me sometimes, who knows what adventure might await. And so, to those of you listening tonight, when these communications come to you, whatever form it comes to you in, look, it might not end up being some world-shaking thing. Who knows? But it might alter the course of your life. So why not stop and put your hand to your ear and just see if something or someone is communicating? Because I think more often than not, it is.
I think that it's conceivable that we were talking about different levels or different depths of consciousness earlier. And, science tells us and has ad infinitum that mathematics is the universal language.
Yes.
Maybe it's also part of consciousness. Maybe it has some part of it is able to be deliberate, is able to seek us out, and flash a little bit of neon into our mind's eye to say, remember this. I used to, this has been happening. 11:11 has been happening to me for so long. I remember when I got my first digital clock, we were living at the farm. I was still a teenager. And that was when I first noticed it at the farm. But I think that it's entirely possible that numbers bear a significance to our lives. For instance, I was born on 10/10 at 10:10 a.m. The executive producer of The Conjuring was born at the same moment I was in 1958. At the same moment.
Yeah.
And he ends up being the one that makes my family's story into a feature film.
Wow.
It blew his mind.
Yeah.
Blew his mind the day he found out that we shared that kind of an exact birthday.
Yeah. Wow.
And, we stay in touch every year. We acknowledge it every year. To me, I don't know, Jeff. I think that I don't think we know, but I think that it's entirely possible. Like when I've had encounters with vessels and I tell you that I can interpret the light language that comes from the different colors that are coming off the vessels.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are messages attached. What I do now, and what I might suggest to you and others, is to do the same thing that I do when I have a download. I used to shush it away and stop that. And, what's causing that? And, always assumed it was something in my environment or, and then I started really getting socked with them and listening and stopping
Mm-hmm.
whatever I'm doing. If I walk into the kitchen
Mm-hmm.
and there's a sequence of numbers that capture my attention on the clock on the stove, I will
Yeah.
stop for the duration of time that it takes for that number to change. And I use that as being present in the moment. I use that for noticing everything around me,
Yes.
um, for being self aware, for being aware of my own consciousness in that minute or less
Yeah.
as it transpires. And then it changes and it kind of snaps me on out, and back I go off to do whatever I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's part of the purpose,
Yeah.
is for us to pause and reflect
Mm.
on the moment and practice the presence in the present moment,
Mm.
whatever you name that presence.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And I mean, to me, it's also just the excitement of it. I love, see, like even now we're chasing rabbits tonight. We didn't talk about that. This is what we were going to talk about. You know what I mean? And now we're chasing this rabbit down whatever trail we end up going down. And who knows what could be initiated in someone's life tonight as a result of this.
Right.
Like you
Right.
just don't know. And that's what's so exciting to me about it, is that, and I'm a, I think the, to me, I think the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian New Testament are some of the greatest esoteric writings that have ever come to be. And it might just be my, because it's my mother tongue. But one of the things I love about it is that it's broken up into chapter and verse that most of the times correlate to what might show up on my clock. Not all the time. Obviously, the Psalms go up to 100 some chapters, but I mean, up to 12, 5, 9. There you can find something that corresponds to it. And that's one thing that I love about it. When I see a number that sticks out to me, I usually get silent and I wait to hear something, and I'll be like, oh, it's 11:11. Okay, whatever. That's because we've already said that. So I'll get quiet and maybe I'll hear, look at John 11:11. And look, bibliomancy, I know from a scholarly perspective, is not the way that you're supposed to approach the text. I understand that. I understand how to exegete a text. I wasn't born yesterday. This isn't my first rodeo. However, I'm a mystic, and so I don't always approach the scripture using the historical critical method. I do when I'm trying to study it for those purposes. But when I'm feeling like I'm being communicated with by something beyond me, or maybe me from another dimension, or however it all works, well, you bet your ass I'm going to I'm going to use different tools other than those given to us 150 years ago by critical scholars. You know what I mean? And so I might close my eyes and be like, okay, what does this mean? And I might hear, go to John chapter 11:11, and I might read a verse that ends up changing my life. And it might be another book for you, but I just love the fact that the changing of numbers on a clock on a stove could potentially be the opening up of a whole new chapter of your life. Like, that's how grand of an adventure life is. Every moment, if you're listening, could potentially be an initiation into like some kind of hero's journey sort of quest that will transform your life and bring you into a whole new state of being that you never dreamed possible. My books that I wrote because I saw 11:11 on a clock. The drastic changing of my I mean, yes, there were other things that happened along the way, but the drastic transformations that occurred in my theology that for a season led me to atheism, that ultimately led to me quitting the pastorate to pursuing a different path of life, which I'm so happy that I pursued. My life completely changed and transformed as a result of numbers on a clock that I stopped and paid attention to because I heard this call concerning awakening. And it opened me up to the possibility that maybe I wasn't awake. Maybe I was still sleeping. If something's calling me to awake, if I'm Lazarus who's awake, who needs to be, woken up from his slumber, well then, geez, I better pay attention. You know what I mean? And so like I started paying attention to the things that I believed, and maybe I'm wrong about stuff that I was sure I was right about. Like it was numbers on a clock that I paid attention to that ended up transforming my life. Every moment through the most mundane thing, numbers on a clock, on a kitchen stove, could be an initiation into a quest, into an adventure that ends up changing your life, that ends up changing your family's life, that ends up opening new opportunities to you that you never even dreamed would open to you. Like that's how grand of an adventure life really is. And I think however one believes or thinks the universe or all of this works, whatever, we're all free to our beliefs. But one thing I am absolutely convinced of is that we are all co-laborers. The Apostle Paul, or pseudo Paul, I believe, says in the epistle to the Ephesians, someone writing in Paul's name says that we are co-laborers with the Christ. That word co-laborers, that's where we get the word collaborators from. Right? A co-laborer doesn't just mean they're the boss and I'm just kind of along for the ride and saying, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, let's just do what you want to do. No, a co-laborer is a collaborator, a co-creator with the divine spirit itself, with the divine logos. We have a choice in all of this, that we are creating our own lives, right? Every moment, every choice we make, choosing to look up a 1111, whatever, we are creating reality, new realities at every turn. And who knows what incredible realities didn't get created because maybe we didn't listen, and who knows what incredible realities are in the process of being created because we did. And I think that's the beautiful thing too, is you've never missed it too. Every day is a new opportunity to enter into a new adventure. And so don't think, oh, all these messages could have been coming to me and I didn't listen, and so God only knows, how badly I screwed things up. Don't think that way.
No.
Every day is a new adventure. There are open doors before you all the time. The whole world is just pregnant with possibilities, and you and I, we get to reach out and take hold of things and put our focus on a thing, and we can create a whole world just by, reality is mind-blowingly incredible when you really think of what we're capable of. It's also terrifying what we're capable of.
Yes.
But if you're a good person with an aim and a passion and a desire, and you're a seeker and you're searching, good God, nothing is impossible for you. Nothing is impossible for you. And I don't know, I just want to encourage somebody who's listening tonight with that. If you think you've missed it, if you think you've missed the boat, if you think, there were these great opportunities that could have been, whatever, but you think you missed it because I don't know, you think you married the wrong person, or you chose the wrong job, or you went into the wrong profession, you went to the wrong school, you listened to this person when you should have listened to that person. Just shush all of that nonsense. Shush all that nonsense. You can reset at any time. And by reset, I don't mean blow everything to hell and,
Right.
leave your family and leave your job and start a new life. I don't mean that. You have responsibilities. Whatever you've taken on, even if you think it's the wrong thing, you're responsible to tend to what you took on. You might have to make certain arrangements, but you're responsible. But you can always start down a new path and start in a new direction. You've never missed the boat. It's never over. The best is always yet to come. And this might just sound like I'm spewing out a bunch of cheesy platitudes, but it's more than that. I think this is truly, truly reality. And, with a positive mindset, PMA, positive mental attitude, if you have that and an aim and a focus, nothing is impossible for you. No matter how old you are, no matter where you're at in your life, you're like, oh, I should have started this at a younger age. If only I would have listened when I was
Woulda,
20 or
shoulda,
18.
coulda,
Yeah.
that's not what it's about,
No, the best
because
authors, right?
everything
Yeah, yeah,
it prepares us.
yes, it does.
Everything that came before prepares us for the
Yeah.
now.
And what is Jung said that, life really begins at 40. And that's kind of a catchphrase, but it's true because it's the second half of your life. Everything up until that point you're learning. So
Yeah.
if you're prior to that point, you're learning and you're prepping. If you're beyond that point, you're there. You're so just don't give up on. I really feel that for somebody tonight. We were talking about all this stuff about destiny and stepping into this, that, or the other and following the path. And if you're really jazzed about life and you're really jazzed about the way things are going right now, hearing stuff like that could really pump you up. And you could leave this being like, woohoo, let's go get it, But if you're not so jazzed and you're feeling a little down and you feel like you've missed certain opportunities, something like this could feel like a gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel it like that. You can always start over. You can. You really can. You are a co-laborer with the Christ, with the divine logos, the agent of creation itself. You are a co-laborer, a collaborator. You can create. You can partner with the divine and create the life and the reality that you want. Okay? And so it doesn't mean there's not pain, It doesn't mean things don't hurt. It doesn't mean we don't screw up, but you can start again. And I just want to encourage you. And that comes from somebody who's been through hell and back a couple of times, and I could share we could share war stories, but I don't want to bore you or traumatize you. But I've been through 7 layers of hell, purgatory, limbo, whatever else is down there. And, I've come out on the other side of it, knowing who I am, knowing who I am and knowing what's possible and knowing that my best days are ahead of me. Anyways, I just went off on a long tangent, Andrea, and I apologize for that.
It's
I felt
okay.
like that was for somebody.
We will continue this in just a few minutes on A World Awakening. There are, several other things that I would like to address and, a great deal to discuss tonight. So we'll let KGRA and our venerable producer, Bill, run his commercials, and we'll see everybody on the other side, I hope.
Yes.
And until then, this class is dismissed. See you back in homeroom. Okay.
Yes.